Hi, good evening, everyone. Happy Monday. If everyone could please stand as we say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Who, Brian? Who's
I
talking?
pledge allegiance to the flag
Hey,
of the
Brian.
United States
of America,
of America and to the republic for which it stands,
Here now.
one nation, under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty,
with liberty and justice for all. Has everybody had the opportunity to review the minutes from our meeting 2 weeks ago? Are there any changes or any concerns in those minutes that anyone would like to address, or can we have those voted on for submittal?
make a motion.
I'll second.
Thanks. Everyone in favor?
aye,
Aye. Aye.
That was really hard. Appreciate that. So I'd like to thank our committee in general, and specifically Diane Tangent and Awilda Baez, who have put in a tremendous amount of effort here, and so has Harvey. It's not a discount to anyone else, but they've done a lot of behind the scenes paperwork, typing up, putting ideas and thoughts on paper and sharing them internally, and I'm very grateful for their efforts. And Harvey has done the same. Harvey, thank you for the comments that you shared with us earlier this afternoon. Sadly, I hadn't had an opportunity to catch my breath and review them with any sort of meaningful intent to understand what you wrote and how it would apply. But I saw that there was definitely some great information there, so I'd like to thank you as well, and make sure that we consider some of those items, or consider all of those items, and then consider which of those are worthwhile or appropriate to add to our plan as we start to get ourselves to the late stages of this committee.
Jeremy, can I just interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to echo what you said earlier. I mean, the input by members of this committee has been absolutely fantastic. There are no bad questions, and a lot of the questions that were asked were things that we hadn't considered, and the participation at that level of we don't know. Like I said, we have the situation here being the smallest force in Westchester, and a lot of things that happen in other police forces aren't really germane to what goes on here. But the input across the board was very helpful and very strategic, because we've left some things that might not have been considered initially, but we brought those things along, and I certainly think that the path we're on is going to be beneficial to the village residents, to kind of get a better feel about what their police force does and what the procedures are, and how each individual that's been on this task force basically brought their own opinions and viewpoints as to how we make it better. And that was our goal. How do we make this better, and how do we make it all work together? So my output to everybody for whatever they brought to the table was more than I would have thought about when we put out, when Trustee Zachary and I put out the list for trying to bring people involved in this, and you guys were certainly good people all the way across the board. So thank you so much.
I think that I couldn't agree more, and I'm really impressed with the thought process and the perspective that comes from each of the different people on this, and sort of what their personal experiences have been. And frankly, I think it's a great opportunity for the police department to get a chance to share who they are and what they do, because for many people, they get up, they go to work, and they go home, and they may see an officer sitting and doing a traffic detail or something of the sort. And I don't know that a lot of people are aware of all the work and all of the great things that go on behind the scenes that the police department does, including me. I wasn't aware they went to the Buchanan Verplank Elementary School in the morning during the drop off and stuff. I think that's awesome, and they're very lucky to have that to have that kind of presence. So, thank you for sharing that, Dwayne.
Thank you.
Regarding the draft plan, so for the community at large that's viewing this meeting, we put together I wouldn't call it an outline. It's a bit more detailed than just an outline, but it's a fairly rough draft that captures many of the different components on the recommendation side of what we're looking to achieve as a village with respect to this reform plan that is being asked of us to review and suggest to our police department and have adopted and submitted to the state. I think what we're looking to probably accomplish in terms of a timeline is the next meeting that we tend to have in a public forum is going to be February 22nd. And I think for that plan, we will take this rough outline and beef it up a bit, include some information regarding the village itself, who we are and what makes our village Buchanan. Additionally, I think some information that pertains to the police department today and the things that they're doing, and right, how many shifts are there, how many officers per shift, and things of that nature, similar to what Harvey had shared with us from the next smallest department in the village, which is still 3 times greater than the size of ours. But in terms of officers, so that we can encapsulate a bit of perspective when people are reviewing our plan and they understand who the heck it is that's writing this plan and why it may be very different than one that's presented from, Peekskill or New Rochelle or any other city in Westchester or in the state, frankly. That'll have public comment on it, right? And then from there, I think we can get together and utilize the public comment that we capture to bring together what ultimately becomes our quasi-final plan that we will present at our follow-up meeting from that, which would be on March 8th. Mm-hmm. Final comment from the public. If there's nothing that changes from the public on the March 8th comment, then that plan will theoretically be completed and ready for submittal. We've given ourselves Friday, March 12th as a deadline. If there is public comment, then we'll take that into consideration on the 12th, revise accordingly, submit a final plan for the 12th, which will give the village an opportunity to have that posted on their website for public review by Monday the 15th or Tuesday the 16th. At that time, the village can then go with a special meeting of some sort or whatever so that they can adopt it and submit it to the state for April 1st deadline. That's sort of the timeline that I had built here. Does anyone have any concerns with that timeline or any other ideas or points they'd like to share before we kind of just outline this draft?
Hey, Marcus, I've got a question. When we adopt this, it's going to be adopting the governor's resolution of this particular law that he's putting in place and go through that normal procedure?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, no, Jeremy, then this is fine. It's in terms of those dates that we've got set up right now. And like you say, what may happen on March 8th in terms of just going to get those final comments from the public. And anyone who's out here on the panel right now, feel free to make your comments known. You can email them to me, to Jeremy, certainly to the panel at large, the committee at large, and certainly to Marcus if you've got any questions. And I'm sure, I don't want to speak for Shane, the acting chief, but Shane would be also available, if I'm not speaking out of term, to, entertain any questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay.
You could, if anyone in the community has an interest, I'm happy to share my personal email. You can reach me at Jeremy, Jeremy .basso, B as in boy, ASSO @ gmail.com. And feel free to email me if you'd like it to become private. I'll maintain anonymity. If you would like it to be shared, I will disseminate it to to the entire. So for the draft plan that was put together, which again is built upon our meeting and that outline from last week. It's an outline regarding Executive Order number 203, and the committee came up with the following recommendations that we are looking to push. And some of this may feel redundant, but I think it's important to just kind of call this stuff out as we move through the process and things become a little bit refined, so that something may have dropped off, something else may have been added. But generally speaking, it's very similar to the items that we touched on at the last meeting. So recommendation number one is increase the diversity of resources used to communicate with non-English speakers. And one of the ideas that came up there was subscribing to a language translation service that can be utilized for Spanish speakers as well as speakers of other languages. So I think it's important here, and we'll call out in our actual memo or the actual draft plan that's submitted, the actions that are currently utilized to communicate with non-English speaking members. It's not as if the village just simply doesn't have an opportunity to communicate with those who don't speak English natively. They've been very resourceful thus far, and I don't think that it's appropriate to indicate that they haven't done anything to find ways to communicate with those that they're interacting with. But I think that giving them the tools and encouraging them to obtain a relationship with a service like this language translation service, and that the community supports that, I think is important to acknowledge that it will help for the those who speak languages maybe that other surrounding departments that Officer or Chief Farrell and his team lean on for support aren't available. There's more than 2 or 3 languages that they may interact with, and it's important that we give them access. So it's not to say they're not doing anything, but this may help them to have a more robust experience. Recommendation 2, expand the use of emergency resources when addressing medical and social issues. One of our ideas here is to create partnerships with health professionals that can support the Buchanan Police Department during medical and social issue calls. If Westchester County were to implement a crisis intervention team, the Buchanan Police Department should utilize their services. Again, it doesn't mean that they're not doing anything now. These are just things that we could add to the list of protocol or options that they should be exploring. Was someone gonna say something there?
Yeah, Jeremy, I was just thinking about the idea that, most of the time when our officers are responding, judging on what the emergency might be, a lot of times being on the Buchanan Fire Department, we also have the ambulance calls and the EMS people there. And I'm just kind of thinking, I don't know, Harvey, if you might be able to answer this question a little bit more, just in terms of, are there any plans county-wide to bring more meat to EMS protocols in terms of trying to intervene or interdict themselves into a situation that may call for a mental review or a mental presence at a particular scene?
Yes, the county is planning on establishing crisis teams, regional crisis teams. So my thinking is you'd be lumped in with Peekskill, maybe Cortland. As I understand it, they'll be operated out of the Department of Community Mental Health. I heard our county executive, when he was addressing Tarrytown, when they went through their review of their plan, say that there will be crisis teams forthcoming. Exactly when that's going to happen, I don't know, but that's his thinking. So that'll be a resource for Buchanan, for the police department to use. Of course, the issue is response time. How soon can the crisis team get there? I think we all have to expect that the Buchanan Police Department will be the first responder, and if it's needed, that hopefully a crisis team will get there in time for whatever situation arises.
Yeah. Thank you, Harvey.
Jeremy, can I add to that? Jim Ferguson.
Yeah, of course, please.
The one item that Harvey had would be something that Dwayne brought up in reference to the fire department and as an EMT, responding to these health emotional crisis situations. I'm an New York State EMT, and the one thing that for an EMT or fire department, the scene's got to be safe prior to us getting there. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. So Buchanan Police Department will overall have the scene, ensure that the scene is safe, and then that's when the healthcare professionals can get in there and provide care if need be. So that's one thing. I don't know if everybody knew that. Because he's not just going to run in there. It's going to be, the police department's going to get the scene secure and safe before we get in there.
So
just
Jim,
keep that in
if I
mind.
understand that correctly, what you're saying in New York City, the current protocol is, even in a mental health scenario, first response typically is the police department to make sure it's a safe environment or a safe scene, and then once that's taken place, then the mental health professionals sort of step in, but they're not the front line.
Yeah. No, they're not the front line. We would,
Okay.
honestly, we would be staging away until police department secures the scene and then they give us the heads up.
Great. That's really great color. Thank you so much for adding that, Jim.
Yeah.
Recommendation number 3 is, of course, this is if the funding is available, I think it's been pretty clear that to fund this as a village itself is probably unrealistic, and it's not the cost, but it's actually the software as a service component of it, I believe, not the hardware purchases, but body and or dash cams. So we would like to see a policy developed on the requirement and use of body and dash cams and guidelines on the use and release of the associated footage. And again, while that is incredible, and I don't think that there's anyone who would disagree that could be useful tool to help the police and to help the community as a whole, there is, and I learned that during this, frankly, there is an incredible expense to storing data, as well as retrieving data, editing data, submitting edited data, all within the timeline that is now required as part of some of the New York State laws that were passed in the past 12 months regarding the police obligation to release documentation as it relates to a case. We're a really small department. I mentioned earlier on the call, right? We have 6 people. The next smallest is Ardsley, which I believe is 19. So hopefully there will be some funding available at some point, as well as maybe like a shared resource where the county operates that data on some sort of a shared database that can be pulled and disseminated appropriately. Chief, would you agree that those are accurate? That's accurate information, and so that you would support, but also it's kind of on a wish list as a result of the financial component of managing such a plan?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely would support any technologies or anything that's going to help us. It's a matter of looking into, researching, figuring out what can work and what best works for Buchanan. Could be just dash cams. It could be body cams. It's going to take a lot of investigative work and then looking through different plans and stuff like that. I have not, and to be clear, I have not heard of any kind of shared resources yet. I don't even know of a plan of any of that. Nobody's given me that information. So, but if that does come along, absolutely, we're all about using the best resources we can and advancing.
Great.
Hey,
Thank you.
Chief, let me just extend that out a little bit. In terms of your communications with county police and state police, the liaison between those two entities, is there anything set on a periodical basis, or is it a by need type of situation? Are there some kind of, quarterly meetings or exchange of information, or kind of an idea of what's going on in northern Westchester or the area? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I mean, they have meetings about different subjects. I've never had one about body cams, sharing.
No. I wasn't specifically talking
Oh,
about body cam, but just in general as department to department.
yeah, they do it on all departments get together and they have different, if you, like COVID-19 vaccines is a big one right now. So
Mhm.
yeah, they have that stuff and we share information to work things out. So, yep.
Yeah. How often are those type of things minus COVID been done?
I'm kind of new to the situation. It looks like they do have meetings, a couple times a month.
Mhm.
But I'm not 100% sure. I'm still trying to get into everything here. So, but they definitely have some meetings.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So the first four recommendations that we spoke to were sort of under the community engagement banner, if you will. And there's three more banners that we have some recommendations, which are one each. We have a total of 7 recommendations, 4 under the community engagement banner. Under the trainings banner, which is recommendation number 5, we would like to make sure all officers attend and continue sort of to attend. And I believe there's something already being done, and I'll ask the chief to just kind of elaborate a little bit, not to put you on the spot, chief, but I think it's something you're fairly familiar with here. It's sort of like a continuing education component here. Ensure that all trainings are evaluated routinely and based on strategies that protect both the public and the police. Whenever possible, scenario-based training should be utilized. Is there anything regarding training, Shane, that you would like to touch on here, or anything you think we should be adding to the plan in terms of detail to make sure that it is an achievable goal and not something that's so lofty that it can't be done, or so basic that it's already being done?
I would definitely let me look into it and come up with some extra wordage and some ideas.
Great. Offline, we did speak, and Chief Farrell did share that there is quite a bit of training that goes on. In fact, we were communicating while Chief was on a lunch break at a training with Westchester County, unrelated to our reform here, just something that they were doing as part of their day-to-day, and sort of an annual type of an event that takes place with the different trainings for different facets of their job. So, transparency, I think that's a big key word these days in business and in policing. So recommendation number 6 for the transparency banner for us was that the police department should demonstrate greater transparency with community members by maintaining and keeping them abreast of the policies and procedures. And in order to do that, we recommend that they build on current efforts of transparency, that the Buchanan Police Department will create a webpage that includes a mission statement, information that's referenced to specific policies, as well as a link where citizens can file a complaint anonymously. Some of those things may exist already, but they're probably, or I can say that they're not easily or obviously accessible. If someone were to just go to the Buchanan webpage, they may not have realized that there was a shield banner that they could click on. So by having a dedicated page and maybe a link that clearly says anonymous tips or something along those lines, we could help facilitate the opportunity for the community to engage with the police without any sort of fear of retribution or anything of that nature, so that they can share experiences where maybe they had a problem with the police, or they have a problem with a neighbor and they'd like some support. So does anyone have any items that they'd like to share in that regard, or on the idea of transparency that are outside of what is listed here? No? Okay. And the last recommendation, which this is one that I am interested in. Not that I'm not interested in all of them, but I like this idea. When I heard what we were doing now, it seemed a little crazy to me, and like not a very great use of the time of our employees of the village. But under the technology component, recommendation number 7, upgrading the existing technology to provide more effective and prompt methods of organizing and accessing data. A record management system that allows for the storage, retrieval, retention, manipulation, archiving, and viewing of information, records, documents, and files pertaining to law enforcement operations. An RMS, which is the acronym for Records Management System, will enable quick data entry, immediate search and retrieval, as well as extensive reporting capabilities. And I think in this day and age, when we have access, right, to data, and we can slice and dice data to understand what's happening and where and how, with who, and all of the different components of day-to-day activity, it makes all the sense in the world. I don't think that there's a viable organization today who's not trying to find new ways to capture their data, find new ways to analyze existing data, to look for, business improvement practice, frankly. And while, for many of us, the police is not a business, well, the reality is it needs to be treated from a business standpoint and understand the different ways that they're interacting with the public, and the public is interacting with them, and get a better insight as to what they're doing, who they're doing it with, how it's being done, and find ways that we could utilize that in the future to better engage with the community. I think that there's a lot of information that we will be able to garner from a much more robust system than what's being utilized today. And I'm excited actually to see that one put into practice. Does anyone have any comments, concerns, questions, or ideas as it relates to any sort of reporting capabilities? No? Officer Farrell, I know that's one that you're excited about. You can get rid of that pen and paper methodology here. You could put the abacus away when you're counting up certain infractions and just let the computer do all the work so you can go back to doing real police work, right?
That's it.
Well, that is the outline plan. I think that we need to do a bit of work over the next couple of weeks for our next meeting to make this a much more robust document, something that has legs and can stand on its own, that gives a bit of an overview of the village. We can elaborate on some of these points and considerations. Harvey, I think that there's probably quite a bit of information you share. It's going to help us to further make this a bit more robust and appropriate. And I am looking forward to getting that done and ready for public comment at our next meeting. Does anyone on our panel have any questions, concerns with the work that we've done, the work that we're doing, the timeline that we've laid out? I want to make sure that we have a cohesive unit, and if not, that we understand where we're not in sync, so that we can better work together to make sure that the committee as a whole is moving in lockstep.
Well, I wanted to ask, I guess Marcus, is he on? Or maybe?
Yeah, Marcus, you're on mute. There
Yeah,
he is. He just unmuted.
I'm here.
So, Marcus, we wanted to include information about the village, the amount of residents, demographics about them. Would you have anything in reference to that?
No problem. I can get you some information. Absolutely.
All right, you can email that to me. And Chief, if you had any information in terms of, and you've spoken about it, what the police department is doing to serve the community, if you could send us a little blurb, email it to me so that I can add that to the plan.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an important part, right, Awilda? Because I think it creates a baseline, and
Yeah,
you get a
of
much
course.
better understanding of what we're trying to reform in terms of a department that has zero community interaction, zero community outreach. You have a really, really big runway, right, to make change. And I think it'll help explain where our plan is coming from and where we're trying to make it go when we have a baseline that can kind of be shared, that prefaces the plan itself on what's already being done.
Sure. I mean, we agreed that although we were making recommendations, we wanted to celebrate our police department and basically give kudos to the work that they're doing. Even though there's a small department, they're doing a big job. And we wanted that known in our plan.
I agree. Well put.
I think, Chief, you need to contribute quite a few sections about what the police has been doing, the training, programs for officer wellness, things like that can only come from you. So, I mean, there's a lot for you to communicate to whoever's actually going to write the report. Is that a Wilda?
Yeah.
The primary writer?
Yeah.
I guess. Okay. I would also, as you mentioned, stress the uniqueness of Buchanan, that it is only a 6-member police department. Whoever's going to read this up at DCJS or wherever, you know, you don't want to be lumped in with some place like Yonkers, which has over 600 police officers. Mm-hmm. And you want to make sure that whoever is going to read this knows the uniqueness of the Buchanan situation. So I put that in the introduction.
And Harvey, when you say, when we mention trainings, do we need to name specific trainings that the police department's involved in?
Well, yeah,
all of them, but some.
I would mention the program, like kind of the hot topic here. I think what they're looking for is anti-bias trainings, cultural sensitivity trainings, and you know, police officers should have that in this day and age. So that's something that should be mentioned. And if it isn't going on, then there should be a statement that, you know, that's something all police officers will be trained in the future in that regard. The more specifics, the better, I think. You don't have to get too much into the weeds, but, you know, talk about like use of force policies, like stop and frisk, things like that, which have to come from you, Chief.
I mean, we have discussed those policies. I wasn't sure if we needed to embed them in the plan. So I guess we do need to name some of these policies.
I think it's a great idea to maybe name the 5 policies that we did the in-depth review on that we felt were most appropriate for this. And I think the other thing we can call out to Harvey's point is the most recent update to those policies that was made, because I think what we'll find is if I recall from one of our prior meetings, Chief had indicated that quite a few of these policies had been updated sometime as recently as 2019 and 2020, which I think will also reflect well on the police department sort of maintaining a current set of records and practices and protocols and best practices as they relate to the current situations that are taking place here in Westchester, as well as throughout the state and the country as a whole, frankly. And I mean, was it the anti-bias training? Was that the one that was updated as recently as September of 2020, Chief? One of those policies were recently updated when we had spoke. I forget which one. I think we covered that in our meeting.
Use of force was probably the last. I mean,
use of force was September. So I think it's important we call that out, right? Let's go over the policies we reviewed in depth. I think we were comfortable with all of them pretty much because of the recent changes that were made, and that's a great point to add.
Okay.
Paul, you're on mute. Paul, you're on mute.
Still haven't figured out how to use this thing.
Nah, you got it good, man.
Okay. Yeah, I have an ongoing concern that keeps coming up. Who are we writing this report for? For the bureaucrats in Albany, or for the use of the village?
The use of the village. That's what I say.
But
it goes to Albany, though.
I understand. That's why there's.
I think it's both.
Harvey, I got to agree. I mean, this did come from Albany, and there's going to be some bureaucrat sitting up there, as you described just a few moments ago, who doesn't know where Buchanan is on a map. But we got to satisfy that checklist, and I just don't want us to get too bogged down or distracted with that, as opposed to the pieces that apply to the village. And the premise, as we long ago agreed on, was that there is, unless we hear something in the public section of this workshop, there's general satisfaction with the relationship of the police department and the village to the community. And that is something that we might want to build on and enhance as is applicable. But I just don't want to get too distracted with trying to put a whole lot of verbiage in there because of something that a state government form requires to have sent back. And I did go back today and I reread that executive order that came from Cuomo that set this whole thing up. And it talks about issues that are legitimate and real and not necessarily things that are applicable to us here in the village of Buchanan. So again, don't want to see us get distracted into a whole lot of wasted time. No, I shouldn't use that word, sorry. Into less important words and efforts to get things down on paper and focus on the things that really do benefit us here in the village. So,
I personally feel, is it my turn?
Go ahead, Diane.
It is, but I think you're echoing a little bit.
Okay. Okay, let me leave the room. I have two things going. One, anyway, let me leave the room. You can't see me, but
You're good. You're perfect. Right
okay.
Yep, you're great now.
I personally think it can only enhance the village to learn more about our police department. That is one criticism that I have. I feel like we don't know enough about what the police department does, and this will only enhance our feelings, the whole community. It will enhance the police department, it will enhance the community, and it's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing.
Well, I think we're all in agreement with that. I think what Paul was saying was we shouldn't keep adding things just to please Albany. We should be true to ourselves and make recommendations that we do believe are necessary in our small community.
Well, let me
We don't know these things. We don't know a lot of these things. We're that some of the things that are in the Arthur report, I think, are excellent. We don't know.
We haven't read that yet, so at least
I read it today, but I think that we could know a lot more. You know, we would have a better understanding. Even the part about the village, I think it'll be.
Oh no, I think we're in agreement with that. I mean,
yeah,
Marcus is going to give us information on that. The chief is giving us information on the police department. That's a given. We're in favor of that. Paul, I don't want to speak for you, but I kind of sense that you were just saying, let's not fluff it up if we don't feel that that's necessary.
That's a very concise way to put it, yes.
Okay.
If I may interject, when we started out this process and looked at the 4 pillars of a 21st century policing policy, and this was a conversation between Nick and the chief and I, you know, we felt that Buchanan in its existence right now was indeed a poster child for those 4 pillars. It's in terms of what our police officers do today in Buchanan. And for my 26 years here, I can attest to, you know, the respect, the dignity, the courtesy, all of those different things that go into what the Cuomo administration is putting forth. We're a perfect example of that in a small microcosm that we exist in. So again, I agree with you, Paul, that, you know, yes, this is going to go into the bureaucracy of Albany and be judged by those who get paid by our tax dollars, because we don't get state funding per se for the Buchanan Police Force.
Right.
Yeah. Our funding comes from us, the taxpayers. Right. So as we, you know, move forward toward completing this, you know, there, like I said earlier, there's some things that we've uncovered here that certainly can work in conjunction with what we're already doing. And, you know, it wasn't a heavy lift. It was a more informative lift. And I think, Diane, as you speak to, it's incumbent upon the village the trustees, the police department, to make sure that they are aware, that residents are aware of the different things we have available to them, you know, and kind of like take a time to stop and smell the coffee, you know, and especially with the outreach to the children. I mean, you know, not only have we done that with the prior chiefs and our current chief, but, you know, we do that with our historical society, where we go out and we talk about the historic nature of Buchanan. And I'm going to have Marcus load up on our video. You know, we were having problems with it, but about 4 years ago, we made a historical tape of Buchanan, you know, that talked about its inception, what the housing makeup is. Yes, talked about Indian Point and all of those different things, but it was an educational piece that went out to the residents and, you know, just gave you an idea of who we are, how we live, what we do. And basically, like I said, going back to those 4 pillars, those are things that are already in place here to a large degree. And, you know, and I'm proud to say that not only being a board member, but just being a citizen of a place that we have that kind of that comfort and the services. So anyway, guys, you again, you're doing a great job, and I'll sit back and listen a little more. Thank you, Jeremy.
Oh, thank you, Dwayne. I appreciate some of the insight that you share. So thank you for speaking up and sharing. I think that everything that I was hoping to have addressed this evening has been touched upon. And we are in, I think, for the work we've done in a short period of time has been fairly robust. And it seems that we are well on our way to meeting the deadlines and helping make sure that we have a great police department and what I think is probably one of, if not the best villages in New York. I love Buchanan. And with that said, does anyone have anything else they would like to add, or any other comments or concerns that they would like to raise or address? We have to open up public comment, I believe. Is that right? Is there anyone who has called in or put their hand up, Marcus, or indicated an interest in make any sort of question or comment from the...
Yeah, we got a couple of attendees. If anybody want to raise their hand, please do so now, and I can let you know, but I do not see anybody raising their hand.
Jeremy, I just have a quick question. It probably will go for...
Jim, hold on. I can't hear you, bud. Is that you, Jimmy?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't hear him either.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, bud.
Yeah, your mic.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, this is probably for the chief or for Harvey. We were talking about the language barrier service. I was wondering, is there a service designated just for police? Because at our last meeting, we talked about the legality of the potential of that service being brought into court. Is there a service that is just designated for police and there's, you know, for them?
I'm not aware of anything that's just for the police. I think it would be more for us to get the initial circumstances down, to understand what's going on, and then again, things don't always have to be done immediately or right then and there, depending on the scenario. Then we would take the appropriate actions through the investigational process, get an interpreter or an investigator that speaks a certain language or whatever, and go from there. So that would be the process usually. The language is really more for, you know, your roadside car stop or an emergency where you need to get some information quick just to get an understanding of what's going on.
Oh, okay.
For the actual interviews or investigational parts, we would have that done.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
So, Chief, I'll give you information I found something and I know what it's generally called, but I don't know if there's a specific company, to your point, Jim, with an 800 number that's available that other police departments utilize. So I'll share it with you. I'm going to go on a hunch and say it's probably what you're referring to. I don't know how to answer Jim's question with respect to their offering, but I'll share that 800 number with you. And I understand that's, $5 a give or take to utilize their services. But again, I don't know what they encapsulate, if that includes a follow-up to appear in court, or if they're just a roadside support kind of program where you would then use the county or the state for a deep sort of investigation, so to speak.
Yeah, that would be the way you would have to do it. Statements and stuff are going to be taken, video or through legal translations, or a certified police officer, things like that. It's not going to be through the language line. The language line is for your immediate assistance to get to where we got to go. So if there's somebody comes to our door speaking Spanish, no other language, and they're crying, we can't figure out what's going on, the language line will get us there. And then from there, we can expand the investigation and move forward from there.
Thank you, Chief. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Jim. That's a great point to raise. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Marcus, has anybody from the viewing public raised any questions or concerns or indicated they want to speak?
Nope, nothing. It looks like everybody's okay. Everything's going on so far.
Fantastic. Well, I guess that is I think that covers all the items on the agenda. Yes. And we will see everybody in 2 weeks from today. Oh, yes, Linda.
I will not be able to attend the rest of the Monday evening meetings because I'll be teaching a class beginning the 22nd. But Awilda, if you need any help writing or transcribing or anything, or Chief, if there's anything that I can write or transcribe, please let me know, and I'm happy to do that in the meantime.
Thank you so much. And then we'll be sure to make sure that we include some recaps if anything comes up in conversation, so that you can read it and continue to participate on a go forward. And then if you'd like anything to be shared, I'm happy to be your mouthpiece and sort of read any comments that you have publicly so that they can be submitted to record as well, if that's something that you'd like to do. Great.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, thank you for the offer to help. I'm sure Awilda could use all the help she could get with all of the typing that we're about to do. So, if there's nothing else, then I guess we'll see everybody in 2 weeks, and we just need to adjourn the meeting.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, good night, everybody.
Great.
Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.
Be safe
Thank
out
you.
there.